Equipco TV. It's going to be larger than life. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Equipco TV. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Adam.
Thank you for joining us here today. We've got a special guest with us. This attractive young gentleman beside me is Mr. Nico Pellegrino from Thermo 2000. Nico, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to run you down a couple questions and see if you can shed some light on the Thermo 2000 products.
Absolutely, been more than likely to.
Fantastic.
Great. I'll start us off with a question here. Nico, tell us about Thermo 2000 and what they are as a manufacturer.
Well, first of all, I like to say that Thermo 2000 is a Canadian manufacturer. We manufacture out of Richmond, Quebec. It's the third generation family. It's a family-owned business. We're actually celebrating our 40th birthday this year.
Happy birthday.
And yes, thank you. And it's a great privilege to work for a family-knit company. I know that everybody knows us in our electric products because that's where we started with the electric products, and then we evolved and have a few unique situations and products that really helps the hydronic industry. As a contractor, when I was a contractor, Thermo 2000 was one of my premier systems because of the benefits that it brought to my hydronic systems.
Awesome. Great.
Beautiful. We're going to get into some of those benefits that you saw as a contractor. In comparison to a typical indirect, how does the TurboMax compare and what are its strengths that compare it to it?
Well, the first thing is that we have to make sure that everybody understands the TurboMax on how it works. Mm-hmm. All right. So basically, I'll just give you a demonstration on the science behind the TurboMax, and then we can move.
Perfect.
In some of the comparisons. All right. So I'll just get up here. We have a cutaway here, which we bring to trade shows and that so that we can help explain how the system works. So when you say, Adam, about comparison, so everybody else in the industry puts boiler water in a coil, heats up a tank full of domestic water, and it goes out to the system. Mm-hmm. We do it opposite. So what we do is we store thermal mass from a boiler. Doesn't matter whether it's electric, gas, wood, rub two sticks together. If you make hot water, we're going to make you hot water. So what we do is in the tank is boiler water. And in the copper coil is where your domestic is. And also what we do is we do it in reverse flow. So we put the hottest water at the top of the tank of the boiler, mm-hmm. and the cold water comes in at the bottom of the tank.
Right.
So it's counter flow. And we don't just dump the boiler water in the tank, we create turbulence. And what that turbulence does is it gives us a great heat exchange between the boiler water and the coil. That's how we can perform a lot better than any other indirect on the market.
When you say perform a lot better, are you meaning that like we can get more hot water out of a smaller size tank with a Thermo 2000?
Absolutely, Matthew. That's a great that's actually one of the questions that I get a lot from the wholesaler side. Is they ask if a typical contractor goes in and says, I want a 50-gallon indirect. Mm-hmm. And now, if they try and sell them to the TurboMax, they try and match 50 gallons to what is compared to our size in a 50-gallon. But that's not the way to do it. It's because, as you said, we can use such a much smaller footprint of a tank to give you actually better performance. And it also helps the whole hydronic system because now this becomes a buffer to your boiler.
I get it. Okay.
right? Because now today's boilers are getting smaller, less water in them, so they're called low mass boilers.
Mm-hmm.
But still, if you try and retrofit a newer system to an older system, there's always that big volume of water that needs to get heated up. So the boiler has to either cycle or just continuously run.
So you're creating a better efficiency within the system.
Absolutely.
And the second huge benefit to a contractor being all these mechanical rooms are so pressed for space, you're actually saving space for other things to go in and people to get in there and do their service on things and that type of thing. So you're actually, creating more space in a mechanical room.
Correct. And in saying that, Adam, you just hit the second advantage of the TurboMax is because we are a thermal mass storage, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you can order this tank. I'm just gonna roll this a bit. So this is what the face of the tank looks like, okay?
Right.
So on the side of the tank, you can get 2 side ports. It's called EXT. So they'll be the same diameter as the boiler supply and return. So now you can take your boiler set of space heating, attach it to the tank, and have your small or micro loads pulling off the TurboMax as opposed to doing primary, secondary on a heating loop.
You can do that because this is actual hydronic water inside the tank, not domestic water.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other key thing that a lot of contractors like is the fact that if you're into the colder climates, you can actually add glycol to the system because now, again, you're in with boiler water. So chances of freezing in a cottage is less. Now you can have it run at a lower temperature just to keep the edge off the cottages or a home where freezing is a possibility.
Okay, I get you. One question that I want to ask you here. Inside this tank, we have 1, 2, 3 copper coils. Can you tell us why there's what the significance per coil is, and on top of that, what do we need to know with regards to that on how to size these tanks? I get asked that a lot.
Right. Okay. So sizing, and that's a good point, Matthew. This is where we kind of run into a few problems with sizing. Is that we're not your typical 50-gallon storage tank. You got that 70% rule. We actually need to know what your GPM or flow demand is. So each house, each apartment building has a certain demand of domestic loads. Mm-hmm. So as you said about the coils, this is our smallest tank, which is the 23. So how it works is the first number is how many gallons of boiler water is in the tank.
Okay.
So 20 is actually 26 imperial gallons.
Right.
US gallons. And then the coil represents 3 GPMs of flow.
So in this case, this is a 23, so we have 20 gallons of hydronic water in here, and we have 3 separate coils inside.
And each
coil will give us 3 gallons per minute.
Correct. So
awesome. Okay.
As far as flow goes, you can get 9 GPMs out of this tank.
I don't think there's any tankless on the market that can do that. That's fantastic for what you get.
But when you put heat to that, your GPM flow slows down because you have to heat the water in order to get it out.
Okay.
But if you look at, a typical 150,000 BTU boiler, with this tank, you're probably going to get, maintaining the water at 170 degree boiler water, you're going to get about 4 to 5 GPMs out of this tank right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when you said before about sizing, we can give you a smaller footprint, but still give you better output. The other thing that needs to be added to this tank is a anti-scald valve.
All right. Why is that?
Well, the plumbing code is that every hot water tank that is serving apartments or domestic system has to have an anti-scald valve attached to it as a safety precaution. But the reason we promote it is the fact that you're using boiler water here. So if you're fluctuating your boiler water temperatures, you have a chance, because we can transfer 99% of the boiler water temperature to the copper coil.
Amazing. Got it. So if you're feeding the tank with like 170, 180, you obviously don't want 180 coming out of the tap.
Correct. There's going to be a small difference in exchange, but you don't want that chance of it going.
Okay.
So I have two parts to my question here. First part being, your water comes in, supply at the bottom, comes up to the top. How long does it take to get to the top to have basically on-demand hot water?
That is another one of our benefits is, so if you have boiler water coming in here at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, you have your cold water coming in here at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, we're doing counterflow. So by the time it gets from here, 40 to 140 in 7 seconds or less.
Wow.
So you never run out of hot water. Constant stream of hot water coming in 7 seconds or less.
So again, when you look at one of the benefits is, compared to first hour recovery, we're pretty much even with everybody.
Yeah.
It's the greatness to our tank is that continuous volume that you can make with this tank. As long as I have BTUs, and the other thing is, if you look at the boiler outlet and inlet, they're a lot bigger compared to everybody else's on the market.
Sure. I noticed that.
So if you look at, I'm getting full flow of boiler water. You can run 26 gallons of boiler water through here. That's going to give you a lot of BTU output.
Yeah.
So that's why we can make that continuous water flow.
Beautiful. Second part of my question here, how would we go about service and maintenance on such a model?
You're hitting all the key points as far as advantages. That is another advantage to our system is there's no anodes to change because it's not domestic water storage.
Right.
The other thing is most big apartment buildings have to check the integrity of the lining of the storage tanks. So because this is boiler water and it's a closed loop, there's nothing to worry about anything building up, because once the water reaches its equilibrium and all the air is eliminated, there is no corrosion happening.
Right.
Demineralized water, right? And because the way the coil is designed, it's an accordion style. It flexes with expansion and contraction. So there's no scale buildup.
As you get the thermal shock, that'll kind of release the I get it. Okay.
Exactly. And basically the same with the copper side of it. There's a little bit more friction in the coil, but it's made to design that way so that it cleans it as it's going through.
One thing that I can say about this tank here, and in the nicest possible way, it's really quite simple. You know what I mean? Water comes in, water goes out hot, boiler water comes in and gets returned to the system. And keeping a hydronic system simple is a very underrated key factor when it comes to putting these systems together, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for kind of telling us about this, but this is just one part of Thermo 2000.